you. Okay, everybody, welcome to this last of the spring meetings of the policy drafting committees. And I want to thank you all for volunteering to be a part of this. Also want to thank the two Dans who have been with this process since last fall. My name is Bruce Lee Clark, for those of you who may not know me. And I am a member of the select board, and we've been doing this since I think October, but I could be wrong, it's a blur. But we've done a number of these, and I think all but Lynn, I think all of you have participated before, so you have a sort of a sense of how this will go. And Lynn, you've been at a number of these. I'm going to ask us to just briefly introduce ourselves so that we can make sure we know each other. Nothing, unless you want to reveal something about yourself that is unique today, just give us a sense of who you are, what you do. That would be great. And I'm going to suggest, since you all can't, we just lost Peter. Oh, there he is. Lynn, would you like to go first? Just introduce yourself and you're on mute. Okay. Can you unmute?
I can.
Here
I am. Yes, my name is Lynn Mazza. I work at the Vermont Center for Independent Living, so I wear that hat sometimes. And when I'm not wearing that hat, I also wear a hat for Rights and Democracy, which is a local activist group. So I'm kind of switching hats on and off throughout this meeting.
Okay. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Wilcox. I'm the DOC advocate for PAVE, the Domestic Violence Agency for Bennington County.
And Beth?
Hi, I'm Beth Sawsville. I have been the director of DCF Family Services, serving Bennington County for the last decade or so, and most recently, I've shifted into a senior policy and operations manager position for the state for DCF Family Services.
Great.
And a longtime Bennington resident.
Yes, I hear you. Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Lawrence. I'm a retired attorney. I've been in Bennington for 35 years or so. I also have been, for most of that time, a member of the Greater Bennington Peace and Justice Center. And also, I am very technologically challenged, so I don't know why my phone...
Uh-oh. He doesn't know why. I don't know either. Popping in and out.
Now I'm back.
You're back. Well, don't worry about it. We're going to use technology the best we can. Dan Ferrara.
There we go. How's it going? Dan Ferrara, Corporal of the Bennington Police Department. I will be on 5 years come August with the police department, and looking forward to another meeting.
Good. And Dan Monks.
Hi, everybody. Dan Monks, Assistant Town Manager for the town of Bennington. Been working for the town for a long time, and I am looking forward to this particular policy committee meeting because it's our last one in the spring, but I think this is going to be a good one. So, thanks everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you all. Just a little word about me as well, and about Dan. If he nods off, it's because yesterday he got his vaccine. So,
yeah, please forgive me. I'm sleeping. Yeah. It's not because I'm not interested.
Yep. We may need to nudge him somehow. And I also have been here living in Bennington since '95. pre-law and forensics at the Southwest Vermont Tech Center, as well as adjunct at Southern Vermont College, teaching various courses there, plus forensics. And that's pretty much what I do. So, code of conduct, and this one I think you'll all see if you've seen any of the others. This one is it's really all policy. Both Dan and I think this is essentially all policy. I looked around. The reason you didn't get any kind of draft of anything until Monday was because I was continuing to look around to see if I could find something that both took into account whatever we might need to do for the Vermont statutes, and I couldn't find anything there. The state police's code of conduct isn't really as it's not up to snuff. I think I could have easily have used the IACP model policy and we would have gone backwards instead of forwards. Either way works. Every department seems to look at this slightly differently, but it seems to me that it's all policy. There's no real procedure here. Even the procedures that are in the IACP model, I think, are essentially policies. So we're going to look at the whole of the document. Nothing is sacrosanct in my eyes. Nothing, I mean, so far as I could see under state statute, nothing has to be there. I think there should be a lot of things there. This is sort of a kind of a foundational policy for all of the rest. And Beth, I will agree with you 100%. It's not just, the dilemma is you need the words, but the words are necessary but not sufficient. And actions and training and all the rest are, seems to me, go along with it and need to be there. So just a word about today's process and then about where it fits in again, just so everybody's on the same page. Today we will end up with some kind of draft. It will, when we're done at 4, and we will be done at 4, it's sort of a hard break at 4, unless you're all eager to stay and finish something up. But generally speaking, it's better to have that deadline. What will then happen is that it will go from Linda Bermudez to Dan Monks, and from Dan, after he looks at it and makes comments or cleans up what he thinks needs to be, he will send it on to me. I will do the same thing. In some cases, we may be just saying, please add this language from the IACP model, and that will be fine. We'll just put it where it belongs. I'll then send it back out to you for your review. That I hope would be early next week. That's been generally the timetable, except for the most recent policy, which still isn't out to the committee. You'll have a chance to look at it and see if it comports with what you thought we did. And if it didn't, that's, you need to tell me, and we'll try to make it so that it comports with what we agreed with. And at that point, it'll go out to the state's attorney and to the town's attorney and to the chief for review. The chief tends to just look at them, but the town attorney and the state's attorney sometimes gets back to us. The town attorney always does, because we pay him. It'll then go to the select board if there are no major changes. It'll go to the select board. The select board will then look at it twice. First time, just the reading. It'll be open for community comment, and then again, it'll look at it the following meeting and may adopt or it may seek more changes, which it has done at least once. at that point, then it becomes if it's adopted, that policy part, in this case, it'll be the whole thing, will then go to the chief for review, and eventually it'll go out for the community for community review. Right now, I think for the ones that we did in the fall, they're all going to be going out, with one exception, for community review for procedures starting on Monday. So that's how the work overall works. Eventual adoption, and there you have it. In the meantime, today, I'm going to hope that after we all have a chance to sort of talk our way through issues that we see on the code of conduct, and I'll give each of us a chance to talk about what parts we might like to see. I think I'll go last today. What we would like, what we think needs to be expanded, what we have questions about, things of that sort. And if you have questions, you can ask them, concerns. Once we're through with that process, we will go to actual doing some wordsmithing, or just saying what it is we want to do. Halfway through today, at about 2:30, so in an hour and 15 minutes from now, I will have us take about a 5-minute break. Remember that this is an open meeting. We follow open meeting law. Remember that Catamount Access is taping us, and so that you will be on Catamount Access television. And also, so even during the break, I would say let's keep our conversations to a minimum during the break. Actually, I would get up and walk and go and do whatever you need to do for that 5 or 10 minute break. And then we'll be back here until 4. Okay? If you have, I think you all know how to use that raise hand. If for some reason you're having difficulty getting my eye, you can always do this, but you can also push the raise hand item, and I'll give you the floor. When it comes time to making changes in the document, Linda will be listening only to my voice, and that's really so that we don't get cross wires. So you can talk to me, and then I'll get it to Linda and try to direct her rather than any other way. And so she doesn't end up with one giant headache at the end of this process. Questions, anyone? Seems all straightforward. Who has questions?
Bruce?
Yes, Peter.
Bruce,
Yes.
I keep getting kicked out. I'm gonna leave and then try to call back in.
Okay.
So hopefully the connection will be better.
Okay.
So I'm not disappearing. I'll be right back.
Gotcha, Peter.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that will happen. If it happens with me, just keep going. Okay? All right. Who would like to begin with comments regarding almost anything that you've read about code of conduct, or about the draft that I gave you is essentially the current code of conduct. So does anybody wish to begin?
Okay. Hopefully this will work better.
I see ya.
Yep. Now I can see you too. I couldn't before.
Oh, that's good. Oh, Peter.
So
Yes. You had some comments, Peter, via email that I think are helpful. Would you like to, at least about
yeah, I will.
the relative size and the relative amount in both of these, or things that are in one and not the other?
I had gone over the IACP model policy of standards of conduct, and as is my habit, marked it up, had areas where I had questions, areas that I highlighted and was thinking about. But then when I saw just the other Monday, this the town's draft code of conduct, it's was very different from, but it was a lot thinner than the IACP standard model policy, and I had questions about that. One of the areas that I wanted to sort of talk about and expand on with the IACP standard of conduct actually are things that are talked about in the duty to intervene policy, which Bruce, you sent to me and I had a chance to look for it. And I wasn't aware that had been adopted, and that works well. My only feeling with that is in the this Bennington Code of Conduct and the section on the second page where it talks about use of force. One of the things I think that should be added to that is a specific reference to the duty to intervene policy, so they're reinforcing each other. The other comments that I have.
Oh, shoot. I think it's bandwidth.
All right. Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Yeah, the last thing, and I think this would probably go under the private life section of the, this draft code of conduct from the town, is from the IACP policy on page 3 of that, the references to not knowingly join or participate in particular organizations, and then that's at the top of that page, and then at the bottom of that, the reference would go.
You back, Peter?
Yeah, now I am. I don't know where I was cut off. Just about.
Okay. You were talking about
regarding political activities.
Yes.
Hello?
Yep, you're there.
I was talking about private life, adding language from the IACP policy about political activity and joining particular kinds of organizations.
Right.
And I recognize that's going to be at the end of our afternoon.
Well, it can be. The nice part about computers is we can do that almost at any time. So, what I heard you say was, if you look at the IACP policy, particularly number 10, the last bullet would be under private life, as well as the section D on page 3 on political activity. And that could be added.
Right. Yeah, and at the top of that column,
yep,
it's reference to officers shall not only join or participate in any organization.
Right. Right.
That language too.
Yes.
And
I think
with that,
yes, I think that.
Yeah.
Peter, I
You
think
still
that's.
there?
I've got that down.
Okay.
Great. And if there are other sections of the IACP policy that anybody model that we would like to see incorporated into, and let me just be clear about what this model is that I gave you. It is essentially it is for all intents and purposes the current code of conduct that the police have been operating under. But I think there are places where we can add material based on our understanding from the IACP documents. And those I had sent you out. I even think I thought I had sent out the current Bennington Police Department Code of Conduct, which is what this is. Okay.
Yeah, you sent that on Monday.
So, thank you. No, I had sent it
Right.
before that, but that's okay.
Oh,
I had not. You didn't get it way back when. Anyway, Lynn, why don't you go next? You've got your hand up.
Yeah. So I didn't know I had received the current code of conduct, but I didn't realize that was the one we were going to be editing today. I wasn't sure if we were going to be like looking at the IACP model and cutting it down, or so I'm just kind of jumping in on this. But
yes, that's perfectly fine. Either one will be a workout. So it's always easier to add than it is to try to cut.
Gotcha. Okay, so in that way, yeah, I had a similar observation to Peter's, that the IACP one is just a lot more meaty, a lot more detailed, a lot more explicit, and I actually like that because it's clear to folks what they need to do or not do. But I would like to see from the IACP standards,
Yeah.
number 4, conduct unbecoming an officer. I think those first 3 bullets under number 4, I think that wording would be important to include in our code of conduct. I think our code of conduct kind of says a lot about what they should be doing, but doesn't get into what they shouldn't be doing. Where the IACP one is all about what they should not be doing. You know what I mean?
Right. And yeah, I hear you. I think that's true. As a general characterization.
Just generally, yeah. I would also like to see, again, it's under general conduct on the IACP policy, but it's on the second page. It's number 8 when it says conduct towards the public. I think I would like that section pretty much cut and pasted.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. Where do you see that?
On the IACP standards of conduct. Okay, you got that?
Yeah, I've got it from there.
Where do I see it going in here?
Where would you see it? I had that one highlighted as well.
It might be just a whole new section under conduct.
It may be. Yep. It may be a whole new section.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think a lot of the other things under conduct unbecoming of an officer, while they're not explicitly included in the code of conduct, I think they're touched upon.
Right.
Enough, but
Right.
I think those 2 sections are pretty important. I also wondered about, with that use of force section on the Bennington one.
Right.
And I don't even know, but I just want to throw this out there. Is that even necessary, considering we have like a whole other policy that refers directly to use of force? So I don't even know if that's even necessary to be there, if there's a whole other
here's
document.
Lynn, I've wondered about that myself. Here's what I wonder, and you tell me, or anybody can tell me whether you think this is stupid or not. And that is that in general, one of the things I would like to see more in the current code of conduct is cross references to other policies that we know they have, like the use of force, and and a statement somewhere at the front end of the code of conduct that any statement within this code of conduct is not complete in and of itself without looking at the referenced policy. So the use of force and response to resistance policy should be referenced both at this point. So this sort of lays a general foundation, but every officer reading the code of conduct would know to go directly to the use of force / response to resistance policy and to the duty to intervene. And I think something should be said in here about duty. There is also there is a duty to intervene when an officer sees an unreasonable use of force. And so I think does that make some sense? That's why I think it belongs here, but with a strong reference, and in fact, it would be my hope, since these are eventually going to be, or not eventually, but soon to be electronic, an active link for the officer to link right to use of force and link right to duty to intervene. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree that having that reference to those two things, those two other policies, would be real important in this use of force section.
Thanks, Peter. I agree. That was on my notes. I think that can be done. I actually think there are a couple of other places, other policies that I actually think should be referenced. Among them, the one that we worked on 2 or 3 times ago, creating collaborative partnerships, and as well as the social media policy. That one, I think, and I think we need to think about how we refer to sort of an affirmative obligation of police, of officers and staff, not to in the same way of not engaging, Peter, as you suggested, with or knowingly engaging with groups. Excuse me. Also not creating social profiles anyway, following the social media policy, which tells them they can't have a public profile or some social media site under some other assumed name. That kind of stuff. And I think that's all an outcome of January 6th. For good or for ill.
Well, it's certainly been brought to mind by January 6th.
Yeah.
And I think that social reference in the social media policy would be part of what's in the private life section, and the collaboration with other community groups and agencies would be referenced in the cooperation with other agencies. So it's not just cooperating with other law enforcement agencies, and make that
right.
A little more expansive by referencing those other policies, that other policy.
Thanks, Peter. Lauren, you're next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, if BPD enters into like any MOUs with other community organizations, it might be really useful to have that hyperlink under the cooperation section, so that way they could just click on that and go right to the MOU and see what the expectations are of BPD and the other organization. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And actually, that might be. We'll try this out, but I'm wondering if one of the procedures under this code of conduct is for these hyperlinks to be created, so that or maybe that's even policy. We're just making sure that hyperlinks are active and created so that officers have a way of conducting that. That's great. That's a great idea, Lauren. I like that a lot. Lynn, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just have a couple more just kind of general things. in the integrity section of the BPD one, I really liked the last line. Respect from the public cannot be bought; it can only be earned and cultivated. I thought that was great to be in there. Then there's the one about cooperation with other agencies, and it brought to mind a non-binding resolution that the select board signed a while back about not cooperating directly with ICE, or only cooperating in the barest way with ICE. So I'm wondering, there was just a question in my mind about how that non-binding resolution plays into this code of conduct.
Right.
So I just putting that out there.
Okay.
Let's see, and there was one.
I was just reading a policy that deals with that we've actually dealt with.
Okay.
Can I tell you which one without looking? No.
No. The other, yep.
Yeah, it's under the motor vehicle stops one has a great deal of stuff, information for officers in order to know what their limits are regarding offering, for instance, not non-cooperation, but we don't offer, if somebody has a civil complaint against them, and much of the immigration stuff is civil complaints, we don't identify that, and we don't link to that, and we don't refer people to that. So there are only criminal matters would be linked with immigration and customs enforcement. And it may not even be immigration and customs enforcement. Maybe a different organization. So, but we can refer to, I think there's a place where we can refer to the traffic. It was under collaboration, right. That the officers need to understand the connection between immigration and they're just a basic traffic stop.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last thing, my last kind of broad comment was, I really like the section about personal and professional capabilities. But everything I read about code of conduct, I kept hearing this over and over again, that it's so important that the code of conduct be reviewed regularly among the staff. So I'm wondering if, and I know that's sort of a procedure thing, but I'm wondering if we could put somewhere in the policy that this will be reviewed, X many times a year, or that there will be a formal revisitation or a formal training about the code of conduct on a regular basis. And I'm just suggesting that we put that, I don't know if that's necessarily right into the policy or right into the procedures, but I think that should be spelled out somewhere.
Thank you. Yep. Beth.
So I guess I was wondering if we could go back to the very beginning of this, and forgive me because this is my first stab at some of these. So
that's perfectly, no, there is no, we're all over the map intentionally. So Beth, we absolutely go back to the beginning.
Good, because I guess that I did some comparison, shopping between the documents too. And what I was struck with, and what I continue to be struck with, is that the initial statement, I guess that there was such a stark difference, and I think Peter alluded to this too, in different areas. There was such a stark difference between the IACP model policy and the local policy, and I was trying to figure out kind of intent. So, like, not separate from purpose, but that too, but both the intent and the purpose. And because what this says to me when I read this is, this policy is for internal use only. oh, I don't even know what that means. Does that, because clearly it applies internally, but to the employees within, an employee policy, but I don't know what that is supposed to infer.
Oh, that's, I now see where you're looking, so that's helpful.
Okay.
That header
Mm-hmm.
is a header that we have been told by our insurer, which is passive. Don't ask me what passive stands for, but it's part of the League of Cities and Towns.
Okay.
That's that's not essentially part of the policy. It's a header for all of the Bennington PD policies.
Okay.
And what it really means, as far as I can see, this is a kind of legal disclaimer, so that if someone wants to bring a civil suit against a Bennington PD officer, say,
Okay.
this is basically about our disclaimer as to what you can utilize these policies for.
Gotcha.
That's an insurance issue, and the insurer has the responsibility of defending the officer, as long as what the officer did has a defense. So that's not really open to our change, but if that helps at all,
Yes.
what it basically, I would say when we say the policy is for internal use only, what that really means is it only applies to the Bennington PD.
Right. Okay.
That's so let's say a town dog officer who may not be, I don't know if this is the case, may not be a Bennington police officer, but let's say Dan hires somebody to be the town dog catcher. It doesn't apply to them.
Yep. Yep.
Now, does that mean that I don't think that any of this language belongs, the code of conduct language? Do I think that doesn't belong to all of us in some sense? I think this is, I feel that this should be the language. This is a general ethical umbrella for the Bennington PD. This code of conduct is, but I actually think it's broader than that. It should reflect the ethical desires of the community. I hope that makes some sense.
It does, and that helps to put it into a frame of reference for me too, because I was
That's okay.
comparing the two, and I was like just struck with the kind of content in that section.
I understand that.
Thank you.
You're not the first community member to ask that question, and I think it's I don't necessarily always like this language, but it is the language that our insurer says we need to have for good or for ill. However, I do think that the purpose.
I can understand why the company would want that.
Pardon me, Peter?
Well, I can understand why the insurance company would want it, but I think it would be disingenuous if we don't recognize that language weakens the impact of the policy.
I agree.
It does. It does, I think,
Yeah,
Peter.
I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but.
No. I think you're right, Peter, and I think that's what I was struck with. So, given that has to be in there for insurance purposes, I think that, it is what it is. But I do think then we have the onus to maybe strengthen the purpose.
That would be fine with me. It's part of what I
Good point.
yes, I think you're absolutely right, Beth. I think that right now the purposes of as stated is really, I will tell you, it's just the first two paragraphs of what the town police are using as their code of conduct. It was more purposeful language than anything else in there, but it's not up to what my standard would be. I would agree with you. I think, and actually the purpose statement in the IACP is not as strong as I would like it to be. So
No, the one piece that I did like in there was the reference to code of ethics.
mm-hmm.
I thought that was good to include there. You know, that part of your conduct adheres to kind of this other, you know, governing, you know, I guess authority, for lack of a better term.
But I couldn't find a code of ethics anywhere. Is there a code of ethics?
That's a question for Dan, I think. I couldn't either.
Dan, me or Dan Monks?
Sorry, Dan Ferrara. I forget.
Well, as you said, this kind of is an ethical policy in itself, but I will take a minute and double check our book and see if there's a specific one on ethics or not. So I'll be right back on that.
Okay, before you go.
Yep.
We do know that there is a mission statement, a goals and value statement. We know that.
Yep.
My question was going to be about oath of honor. Do you have other than the oath that you take as police officers to uphold and defend the Constitution of the state of Vermont and maybe the United States, I guess, and whatever else is in that, is there an oath of honor that you take?
So when we get sworn in as police officers, that's when we raise our hand and say I swear. That's our oath.
Okay.
So, but I will be right back and check on the ethics.
Ian, is that oath considered an oath of honor? Like, is that what it's called? Are they one and the same?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
We may want to find that. I hadn't thought of it until last night, and include it as an appendix. I'm thinking of if there's a code of ethics, we would want to refer to it. If there isn't, we would want them to make sure there is one, and the oath that they take. And the mission, vision, mission, goals, and values, or whatever that language that is there. I know the community worked on the one for the police department. May want to have those as an appendix to this, if you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it
I'm
does.
gonna make a note about that.
In their purpose, Bruce, it does reference that they must be fully aware of the ethical responsibility of their position. So, unless that is fully outlined for them, is that, you know, which I would hope that it is somewhere else, then it would seem to be that it's every person for themselves in terms of identifying what that is.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. In every one of the policies that we've drafted and adopted, or at least drafted, and in this code of conduct, we are creating in essence, a kind of code of ethic. It basically, if you look at the use of force response to resistance policy, for example, that is really all about how one treats another human being. And at the very beginning, it talks about a reverence for life. So there are these ethical principles that are established throughout the policy. They're not all put together in one code of ethics. They are, and these policies, as far as I understand it, and this is how I've worked with other departments, these are not optional. This is not sort of, well, you can sort of take it or leave it, or you can make it up for yourself. So the policies themselves, as far as reaching into that, like social media or I think that's why it's so important to add the stuff that both Lynn and that we've all been talking about adding to the current. It seems to me that those, how should I put it? It seems to me that all of those things make it so that an officer is clear about their responsibilities, and there is only room for discretion where discretion is most advisable. That is to say, in dealing with the public, you don't have to charge every crime you see. You don't even have to stop every car that's going over the speed limit, or that has a tail light that's out. You just don't. You have discretion, and I think it's important that that discretion section is there. But you don't have discretion over things that are set in policy. So the use of force, for example, is not open for, I would say it's not open for personal, individual interpretation, because the standard that we're using is a reasonable officer in that situation. So it's a general standard. It's a generally accepted standard. It's what's going on. It's what's being said right now in the trial out in Minneapolis. It's not every dog in for itself. You can't run a police department that way. You really shouldn't. If that's a help. So we'll wait till Dan gets back. But anybody else? I mean, I think we can. It seems to me we can work this so that even though Linda doesn't have, I don't think she has the language from the IACP policy, we can actually just identify where we want additions and what those additions are in the current document when we come to that. And we either can read them into her, or we can just say, add this language, and it'll be likely that I will do it, because we don't, sadly, IACP did not send us a Word document of the standard of conduct. They just didn't. So I will have to, somebody will have to type it in, but I can do that. That's not hard.
Bruce?
Yes.
Just on this duty to intervene policy that you sent to me.
Yep.
It has definitions, and I like that, and I think it may be useful for this code of conduct. Section refers to the word and also I look at the duty to intervene, there's a reference to objectively reasonable, because reasonable is a legal term of art, but it's open to a lot of interpretation. So I think it would be good to have that kind of definition section, at least for those two terms.
Can you say the first one again, because you broke up during it?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Having a definition section at the end. The first
Right.
one being about the word discretion, and the second the word reasonable.
Right. And if we are going to, if we end up putting in, and I don't have a problem with it, conduct on becoming an officer, CUD,
Right.
CUO rather. If I don't know any other place in the policies where that's defined, and I think that would actually be helpful if we're going to utilize that language. Okay, so that would be a third. I was going to ask about definitions when I got to me, so thank you for that. Generally speaking, we have always done purpose, policy, and definitions. And as I recall, even the IACP model doesn't have a definition section, which I found odd. So great. And if we come across other language, ladies and gentlemen, during the day, during the afternoon that we think needs a definition, let's add it to a definition section. I think that's perfectly fine. It would go right at the end. And then I think there will be an appendix. Corporal Ferrara. There we go. That's the right Dan. What did you find out?
So there is no other policy specifying ethics. It's just incorporated into this, which is what I thought too. But
yep. Nope. Thank you for checking. So we need here is the dilemma, and Lynn, I'll call on you in just a sec because you got your hand up. One of the dilemmas of saying here's what you don't do when you start making that kind of a list, the obvious shortcoming of that kind of a list is you're going to forget something. And when you forget something in a list that says don't do this, it's like a 2-year-old. They're gonna find the loophole. I want us to be aware of those kinds of things. That's one of the parts of the current model from the town that I actually liked. It's affirmative. You have a responsibility to do this, and it's broad enough so that an officer will find it difficult to play the game like, well, it doesn't say so specifically, because we're not making that kind of a list. And if we do make that kind of list, we're going to say includes, but it's not limited to, just so that everybody is clear. Lynn.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan Ferrara. I should have asked you this when you went before. Is it possible to get a copy of or the wording for the oath that the officers take?
Yeah, I was not able to find that in writing, so no, not right now.
Yeah. But we do want that as an appendix.
We do have when we do take the oath, we physically sign it and it's kept in our files, our personnel files, but not readily available. Do we have a copy of it now?
Gotcha. That's okay. You will get one to me, just a blank version of it.
I can try.
Sometime between now and the weekend, and then I can send it out to everybody so that they'll have it.
Okay.
Never dawned on me till now. Beth.
I guess that this didn't occur to me before now, but Corporal Ferreira, it would be helpful to hear from you, kind of from somebody who has been working in the field, to kind of tell us, like in your own terms, how you define code of conduct in your profession, in our community.
So it's kind of like what we were talking about. It's our ethics. It's what we live by, how we need to be perceived to the public, maintaining professionalism, and both on and off duty, we are representatives of the Bennington Police Department, and that's how we have to conduct ourselves.
Thank you.
Any other general comments? Lynn.
I wondered if we wanted to kind of take some wording from the mission statement and put this in either purpose or under primary responsibilities of a police officer. It kind of has wording that kind of goes around it, but I wonder if it just, I don't know, if it's just an extra thing to do. I don't know.
Did you have, I didn't send it out to anybody.
I have the mission statement.
Right, I have it somewhere.
It says the Bennington Police Department is accountable to the community for providing everyone, regardless of identity, with respectful and equitable law enforcement protection and service. The department and the community will achieve this through collaborative and positive relationships, which contribute to the betterment of our quality of life. And I don't know that whole thing necessarily should be in there, but I just like the wording of,
Particularly the first sentence.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that might very well be good language that would fit under the beginning of the purpose. Since the mission statement says blah 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 blah, in part, that first sentence. Members of the Bennington Police Department must be fully aware of the ethical responsibilities of their position and must strive constantly to live up to those high standards of professional policing and the standards of the mission statement, and then put a footnote C for the whole C Appendix A attached. I mean, I think that's where we can do some. I don't have a problem with incorporating that at all. That was work of the whole community, and I think from last summer, and I think that's well worth, and particularly in this kind of foundational document, it's unlike a policy on use of conductive electrical weapons. This is an actual foundational kind of document, so we want to reference any number of those kinds of foundational statements, and then include with that there's visions and goal. That's the mission statement. There's also a goal statement that the department has put together, and it's on their website. That it would be great to have it in here and referenced actively.
Are you talking about the tenets of the Bennington Police Department?
I wasn't necessarily thinking of that document, although that's an interesting document to be thinking of. That's sort of come out of the work with Curtis that the senior leadership has been doing.
Yeah, I found it when I was looking for the Code of Ethics. I didn't realize it was there.
We suggested that they put it up. It's fascinating, isn't it? So I think we could also reference that and have that in an appendix as well. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's really helpful. And ladies and gentlemen, let me make a note to send that to everybody, at least a link. It's a document that was really created by the senior leadership of the department. It's called the Tenets of Policing, I believe. And it's sort of relatively new. I will send that out to everybody just so you have it, and we may want to include it in an appendix or as a reference in the appendix.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn, for even mentioning it. Are we ready to do some work on the actual document? And see, for instance, do you think we could, before we take a break, make the purpose of this document something that we would be proud of and strengthened to the degree that we would feel more comfortable with it? Because right now I don't feel that comfortable with it. Are we ready to do that? We can try. Why don't we, hi Linda, thank you for your work. Why don't we do this? Linda, start at the very beginning. And, I just suggested something. Do you want to try to incorporate that first sentence of the mission statement right here at the top of the purpose? We could say, Linda, try this. And then I'm gonna switch to Lynn, because she has that language right out in front of her. But I'm gonna start with this. Since the mission statement, no, actually, why don't you just say the mission, yep, that's all right, just of the Bennington Police Department states, in part, thank you, comma, quotation. Lynn, this is where you're going to read.
All right. The BPD is accountable to the community for providing everyone, comma, regardless of identity, comma, with respectful and equitable law enforcement, comma, protection, comma, and service. That's it.
Yep, don't put a period there. Yep. But put a comma. Actually before the quote, but don't worry about it. Then make a lowercase a for all. Yep, BPD.
Does Linda have to keep writing out? Oh, no, she doesn't. Never mind.
No, she doesn't. Can you ditch the word possible and see what happens there? Just cross it off. How does that read for everybody? And what do you think of that as an opening statement? It's not enough, but it's beginning. I see Beth shaking her head.
Good start.
Is that a good start? I think it makes it clear. I must say that the next little paragraph I was confused about. I didn't even understand what it is about clear advice and counsel available to assist them in performing their duties. Is that, I mean, when I think of clear advice and counsel, I'm thinking about a person, not a document. Is that what that strikes you all as?
Yeah, I was thinking, I kind of had that same question mark in my head. I was thinking that would be cleared up by saying something like, this document is to provide clear advice and counsel.
Yeah, or
to provide guidelines for, or yeah, something like that.
Or we could substitute, or at least use the language from the ICP model, which says the purpose of this policy. Linda, write this in. Just go down a pair. Yeah, there you go. Gosh, I love you. The purpose of this policy is to provide specificity to standards, or actually is to provide, go back, standards of conduct embodied in the law enforcement officer's oath of office, I think.
Oath of honor. Oath of honor.
Yeah, except that, well, maybe it is. And
It is. I looked it up.
okay, and what did you find?
For in Vermont, it says it gives it to you verbatim,
Perfect.
and they call it a Vermont Law Enforcement Oath of Honor.
Perfect. Okay. So it's capital O for oath.
Yeah.
Capital O, yeah. A law enforcement officer's oath of honor, capital H.
Yep.
And I would just say, and this, excuse me, this agency's statement of values and mission. So that all officers and employees have a clear understanding of agency and community expectations pertaining to conduct and activities while on and off duty. Period. That, it seems to me, it's a start. Lynn.
Can we add some wording maybe to the end of that to say
We can do whatever we want, Lynn.
to say something like this policy will be formally reviewed with an officer upon hire and one time per year, formally reviewed annually or something like that. What I'm getting at, or what I'm trying to get at, is I think all of us have had the experience, or maybe it's just me, when we take a job and we're handed the employee manual, and
Oh, yeah.
in there's the expectations, and like, I don't know, I'll be honest, I've signed the thing without really reading it, and so
Right.
and so I'm wondering, I really don't know what an officer's intake looks like when they first begin working, but I wonder if it's the same thing where they're just kind of handed this policy and the expectation is they're going to take it home and read it, but then it's never, it's signed and put in a drawer somewhere and never discussed again, versus having, a formal discussion with your new supervisor and then having a formal meeting every year where everyone on the force is reminded about the expectations. Or does
Let's-
that not fit here? I'm not sure.
I don't.
It may fit somewhere.
Yeah, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say I don't feel like, I think what you're referring to, Lynn, I completely agree with 110%. I don't think it's part of the purpose of the policy. I think though that I would say that there's been so much revision of policy work being done that there needs to be a procedure that accompanies all of the new policies to ensure that policy and practice go hand in hand, and the only way to do that is to have a regular review and evaluative process.
Yep. That's what we used to do. Even just a little quiz. I mean, an online thing that was pretty non-judgmental, but it forced you to actually look at it. Dan, for our talk to me about, you're aware of and you're now in supervisory role.
Yes.
So,
So, I don't know if you guys can see it, but this is our binder that contains all of our policies and procedures that we are bound by. When we are first hired, part of our original training is to go cover to cover, read through that entire book. As part of your training as well, that each officer signs off that they have read and understood all of those policies. And then, as you mentioned, all these policies that we are now updating through this process, as well as, I mean, they routinely get updated as well anyway. But anytime there is a policy that is updated or revised in any way, it gets reprinted, dispersed out to all of the employees to then read and sign off that they have read and understand them. As far as going over them annually or anything like that, that does not happen. However, that would be more of the individual officer's responsibility, since they have signed off saying that they understand them. That's up. I would think that would be up to each individual officer to make sure that they know what's expected of them in various situations with all of these policies. So that should be something that the officers should be doing anyway if they have, and I routinely do it too, if there's a situation that I don't come across a lot, and maybe I come across it during a call, I will revert back to the general order book here and remind myself on our procedures on how to do things. So I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to mandate it to be read and understood and re-signed off every year, but that's something that everyone should be doing anyway. Just to, like I said, they're liable for it once they sign off saying that they understood it. So.
right.
But I would say from, so I'm getting, because I'm a social worker at heart. So coming at this from a more strengths-based approach, though, I would say that, your hiring process is not one that's, kind of whoever, throws their hat in the ring and, meets qualifications and you go, right? I mean, you have an interview process, you have, kind of a vetting process. And so along with that, it would seem to me in terms of from a staff retention standpoint, that you would want to be able to support your officers as best you can by making sure that they're up to speed, because point in time reading it and understanding it is not the issue, right? Like, reading it and understanding it today, applying it tomorrow is where it really needs to shine, I think.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so, like, it's just from a standpoint of wanting to set your workers up or your officers up for success as it relates to their following of protocol and policy. From that standpoint, I say I don't know what the frequency should be, but I say that there needs to be some procedures in place that ensure that they're almost kind of like become second nature, because they're, it's not that they're not understandable, they're but how it rolls out in practice is the piece that you want to be able to strengthen.
Yeah, kind of dovetailing off what Beth said. Yeah, I feel like, it's one thing to sit on your, to bring it home and sit on your couch and read it through. It's another thing to have active discussions about it. And I kind of think it should be actively discussed, at least between supervisor and employee, if not like at staff meetings. Just like Beth said, to keep these things really in the forefront of people's minds so that they're able to call it up and bring it into practice in the moment.
So I'm just trying to, do you think that we haven't asked that about any other one, but this one is sort of a foundational document. It's different from the other policies. And Dan, let me just ask the question. When you do a yearly review
Yes.
of you, or if you do an annual review of one of the patrol officers with one of the patrol officers, which I'm assuming you do, would it be an appropriate activity to the officer to say, before we meet, I'd like you to just go through and reread that code of conduct policy so that we can have a brief discussion about it in relationship to this annual review. Would that make any sense in your?
I mean, I'm not saying I wasn't saying that this was a bad idea or anything to have this gone over annually in some shape or form, but I was just saying my experience and real time experience is this book is always available to us. It sits on a shelf in all of our offices and it's readily available
right.
at any time.
And it's going to be even more available to you shortly.
Yeah, I'm actually excited for that since it'll be online, because trying to, like I said, just trying to find an ethics thing, and this whole thing was instead of just going online and typing ethics as a search word and have it pop up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, and like what Beth was saying, it can come down to a supervisory responsibility as well, just making sure that those that work under you are prepared and squared away and knowledgeable about not only this policy that we're going over, but all of the policies and procedures. It should be the supervisor's responsibility to keep an eye on those that you supervise, and if there's any sort of lacking of adhesion to any of the policies, to coach them and make sure that they are performing their duties at the highest standards.
But then from what I'm hearing, and help me out if anybody else has anything about that to say at this point, I think it would be good to say, make a suggestion in the early, right after definitions, put in procedures, and say, do more than encourage, but to say this document and other policies should be reviewed regularly or something, and maybe this one annually with all the employees of the department, because it applies really to all the employees of the department, not just the officers. So
and maybe it's a minimum, Bruce. Maybe it's as needed, but annually at a minimum.
At a minimum, and we'll shape that language before we leave today. And if we don't, I'll make sure it gets in there, and you can take a look at it and see if it's adequate. I do like the idea, particularly in this foundational document, of making sure that at a minimum, there's a kind of, and it seems to me this document could lend itself to, because we've also said that annually, officers under the social media policy, they will attest to the fact that they have not created a social media site that is in some name other than their own, and I'm using my own language in that. So that has to be done annually anyway. It's a perfect time. I mean, it would seem to me that the code of conduct could become a document that would structure that annual review, and that's why it might be done minimally on an annual basis, without trying to micromanage the department. Peter, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I agree with all of that. I think that's perfect. I'm just also thinking in the very first paragraph to maybe add at the end where it says constantly live up to the highest standards of professional policing and follow all the policies of the Bennington Police Department. Because this is, as you said, a foundational argument.
Yes, it is.
So
Linda, let's try that for a moment.
Include a reference to all the other policies.
Yeah. And Corporal Farrar, you're going to remind me what that book is called. Is it a...
General Orders.
Thank you. Okay, so put after policing and commit to following, or actually to, excuse me, just get rid of that, to understanding and following all of the general orders of the BPD.
Now, is general orders, does that
That's what these
incorporate
are.
all these policies?
It's all these
Okay.
policies are going to be under the general. Yes, they're all going to be general. It's one of those great dilemmas that we have with the interface between lingo of the police department and lingo of everybody else. So we could actually put general orders, and Linda, put after general orders in parentheses adopted policies, just so that everybody else knows what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Capitalize the P in policies.
Yep. P in policies is going to be capital. Lynn Mazza.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a deal this is, but in the IACP one, it starts off with saying that all officers will obey, just more generally, obey the law. I don't know if we want to put that in there, or if that just goes under private life, or if that's so obvious it doesn't even need to be included, that the assumption is that officers will personally follow the law that they're enforcing. I don't know.
No, actually, where were you reading? I know it's there. I'm just asking, is it under purpose, or, because that's all where we are at the moment.
No, it's under it's under general conduct, which is B. It's number 3, adherence to laws, regulations,
There you go.
and orders.
Yep, I remember it now. Thank you.
And yeah, and it's,
B3.
they shall obey the laws, regulations, and policies.
Right. Okay, so we will get to that. I think that will be included. I had it marked too as one of my wanting to have that included.
Okay, so it can be included later. It doesn't
Oh,
necessarily
absolutely.
fit.
This is
so
just
it doesn't
under
fit here.
Yeah, even if we said it here, this is the general purpose of this document. Okay. Is there anything in the lines 18 to 21 that we need to include under purpose? Or can we just, I didn't think so now. But I'm with you, Beth. But are we okay there? Can we delete those?
In fact,
Remember,
I think,
even if it's deleted, it's not gone forever. It's just crossed out.
I just think we've made it so much more clear and stronger.
I like it better too. Linda? Yep, just delete. Thank you. Move down to policy. Okay, now we're going to take a break until 2:37. Okay? 2:37. Okay. Yes, Beth. Okay. Whatever you're gonna do it, because we're not getting you, and we need you. Okay, everybody. Seeing home. Very clear.
Well, let's hope it stays that way.
I know. Frustrating, isn't it?
Yes.
So, do I have everybody? I think I do, at least of the committee. Good. Here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest two sort of a process here that might be helpful, and what it's going to take is some level of trust on Beth. Darn ya! Look at you outside. Gosh darn it. What I'm gonna suggest is that we go through this document with a relatively light hand. There is some language stuff that I'd like us to look at, and I'm sure there are for you. And if we're going to add something, a section or a part of a section from the IACP model, that we just identify it, and it'll get added and it'll come back to you with that insertion. Does that make some sense? It's a little easier for us to pull that off. So, for example, I would say, under the primary responsibilities of a police officer, what I would like added, in addition to a little bit of language change, I would like added that section under at least B3, if not also B1 of the standards of conduct from the IACP. So what I would have Linda write in there is after this section, but before the next one, before performance of duties of all members, and we might quibble as to location for some of this stuff. But the primary responsibilities are, maybe we've already said B1, I don't know, but B1 and B3, so it would read IACP B1, B3. And that way we'll know it'll be a hint to Dan and to me, probably me. Why don't we just say me? It'll be a hint for me to put that in there before I send it all out to the rest of the room. That's very easy for me to do. Does that make sense?
I think that's fine, but I don't think we need all of the bullet points on B3.
Probably not. What would you like to eliminate, Peter?
The last two.
Yeah.
I mean, that comes under other stuff anyway.
Yeah. I'm with you there. That makes sense.
And
Can we go back? Can we go back to the existing paragraph and then see how we can? That's it. Yeah. Thank you. And I've got the two deletions that I had question marks next to. So, what do people think of that particular paragraph as it sits?
Well, this is just the grammar editing. On the last, as it sits now, the last sentence, ensuring the right of all.
Yeah.
You got to add the word to.
Okay. Okay, that's better. Yep, add to before liberty. And can we say ensuring the rights, put S after rights? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's better than my grammatical suggestion there. That's shorter. Can I ask a question about protecting the innocent?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was just
Lauren,
going to raise my hand to see if anyone else felt some kind of way about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My suspicion is that, and knowing Dan Ferrara, is that he wants to protect more than just, he wants to protect the public, everybody. Not just the innocent, because quite frankly, I'm not sure whether you know who's innocent or not. That to me is getting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, sometimes it's a coin toss.
Yeah, it is. And if you look at me, I can understand that. So, can we just say, how about protecting the public or the community or something like that? Which would you prefer?
I like protecting the public because community already shows up.
Okay, I do too. That's what I have written down, but Peter?
I agree. Public.
Okay.
I like.
Public. There we go.
The other thing about the wording in the IACP one is it says officers shall follow the agency's mission and value statement, but didn't we just say that in purpose?
Yeah. Where is it? Oh, it's up in, B.
Yeah.
Well, that's the purpose of the document. Now we're going to say what they have to do.
Okay, so we're gonna say it again.
Oh, heck yeah. Why not?
And so maybe this is where we put in officers shall follow the agency's mission and value statements and any state and federal laws.
Yes, I think that's, well, actually, that's what we're going to suggest. The first two bullets,
Oh, you're right.
all of B3, just the first two bullets. They also ought to obey all lawful orders. So when Dan Farrar tells a patrol officer to do something that's lawful, they should follow that. And if in putting that stuff in, you can trust me on that. If it starts to refer to something that we already know they don't have, like code of ethics, this is the code of ethics. I won't include that. I'll edit it for those purposes. How about performing? Can we go to the next one? Looks like we can. Okay. By the way, we should refer to the fair and impartial policing policy under this one. And I'll get you in a minute, Lynn. A lot of this is covered in specificity under the fair and impartial policing policy.
Bruce?
Yes.
I think having that reference to the fair and impartial policing policy in here is a good idea. I haven't seen that, I've looked at that policy. But I also think that this is a place where we can inject, probably after the second sentence of this paragraph, the language from the IACP standards of conduct. This is on section 10B10, the last bullet point.
Peter, are you talking about officers shall not knowingly join or participate in any?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And I think that should go there. And then later, when we're talking about private life, we would insert into that for the IACP paragraph D, political activity. I mean, they're saying some of the same things, but I think it's important to have that reinforced. What do other people think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
Bruce, I think you're muted.
I am somehow. Can we utilize the list of where it talks without regard to status, blah 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 blah, that list, and use the list from fair and impartial policing, not this particular list? Because that, you know, in Vermont, that's a very unique list.
I think we have to, given consistency in Vermont law.
I agree. So I will change that list. And we're going to talk about disability as defined in statute and blah, blah, blah. There's a number of places where we have that, where we've utilized that list, and I want it to be the same everywhere we can. So, Linda, before we lose any of this, here's what I'd like you to do. Can we, okay, after performance on line 5, just create something that says refer to FAIP, fair and impartial policing. That's and then close parentheses. And then after the word, I think after dignity, Peter, is that where you were thinking?
Yes.
Add IACP B10, last bullet. End of parentheses. We won't worry about any. Yep. I think that's as fine a place to put that as anywhere. And just after the list of, without regard to status, sex, blah, 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 or after the word aspiration, it's on line 8. There we go. Parentheses, new list. Thanks. It'll be enough. It's also veteran status. It's a whole different list. Okay. How else would we like to, or would we like? Yes, Lynn Mazza.
We have to correct the spelling of deportment. I assume
Okay.
that we mean deportment, not department.
I'm
That's the
assuming.
last line.
Yep, appearance and deportment, line 13. Thank you.
The wording, where is it here? It's on line 12, where it says obtain maximum cooperation from the public.
Yeah.
I guess this is the time to be picky. I don't know, something about obtaining maximum cooperation. I don't know, it sounds military
Right.
to me or something. So I was playing with other words for that, and I thought maybe work collaboratively with the public, but that doesn't really quite get to the
No.
meaning there. But those words,
Yeah, I get what you mean. Can we, members will strive to,
just work cooperatively with the public. I don't know.
I know what they mean, but yeah. I don't like the word obtain at all. I had that marked out on mine. How about achieve? Is that a better word?
Yeah, that makes me a little more comfortable. And I don't know.
And then get rid of the word maximum and just say the greatest cooperation
greatest
Yeah, that's
level.
better.
What it was the last word you said, Dan?
The greatest level of cooperation.
I love it. Level of.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
That's what you really want.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Exactly. And it says it in a much nicer, less militaristic way. No, that's okay. That it changes the tenor of the document in a way that I think is constructive. Okay. Yeah, I feel good about that paragraph too, as well. Let's put it that way. We'll probably letter each of these, just so that they're easy to refer. So don't worry about that. We'll do that another day. Linda, you don't need to worry about that at all. Dan or I will letter these. Let's talk about discretion and maybe, Peter?
Yes?
Is this, yes, this was one of your, and I agree.
I think, you know, we've already talked about having at the end a definition section that defines discretion and the principle of reasonableness.
Yep. How would you see, let's do that. Linda, go all the way to the end. Can't be too far. Okay. So you're going to put in a section called, after all that, definitions. Capitalize it. Or don't worry about it. Just. Okay. And under A, discretion. Peter, how would you describe discretion?
Really? You want to ask me?
I do. You're the one that.
Yeah, no, I think discretion is more difficult than principle of reasonableness, but that's only because reasonableness has legal, has legal meaning, what a reasonable person would do under the circumstances. Discretion is harder for me, and was one of the reasons why I wanted a definition, because when I read that, I was okay, well, what does that mean?
Well, I just went to get a big document, a big book to see if I had any help.
A dictionary?
Dan Ferrara.
Yes.
Oh, Dan Monks, you have your hand up. I'll let you chime in.
Oh, so I wish I had a good definition for discretion as well, but I think that this is an incredibly important topic.
Yes.
Because how you exercise discretion as a law enforcement officer is extremely tricky, because we're saying that it's not right to every time you see a law broken that you arrest a person, but you need to be careful about how you exercise that discretion, what factors go into that, and you have to make absolutely sure you're not you're not using discretion for some class of people in one way and discretion for another class of people another way. So
right.
I wish I knew how to define it, but I think that even if we can't come up with something today, that we make sure we get it right, because I think it's incredibly important.
I wonder too, Dan, what you made me think of is, I wonder if it makes sense to define it like for what it is, and then underneath that we can add a couple of bullets, which is kind of what Peter's talking about, add a couple of bullets that emphasizes that when you're using one's own discretion in a role of authority, you know, that there is greater impetus to make sure that, you know, yada, 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 whatever. You know what I mean, though? Like, I think we can define it and say, yes, and this is what applies for, you know, BPD.
So let me give you a heads up as to where I also believe that this is critically important.
Yeah.
It's essential that we get this right. So this may take us a little bit of time that people will feel a little funky about, but I think it's important. When applied to public officials, this comes from Black's Law Dictionary, but it also comes from a case called State versus Whitman out of Rhode Island. When applied to public officials, discretion means a power or right conferred on them by law of acting officially in certain circumstances according to the dictates of their own judgment and conscience, uncontrolled by the judgment or conscience of others. It talks about action taken in the light of reason as applied to all the facts and with view to rights of all parties to the action. Basically, it means that the officer is given by law, and I think this is correct, the right either to act or not to act based on their own understanding and judgment of what is right and what is wrong. That's what discretion means. And it does have a relationship to fair and impartial policing, because it cannot be based on certain areas. It also has, and I think it has a relationship to taking gifts and receiving gifts and having particular relationships. And officers know that having those kind of relationships should not be the dictate of their discretion. That just because I might be a friend of an officer, that doesn't mean the officer necessarily gives me a pass on a traffic violation. So I think I'm actually comfortable with the notion that that's what discretion is, that it's a power that is given to officers under law to act or not to act based essentially on their own judgment about what is right and what is wrong. Does that make sense to people? I'm happy to read that to Linda and have her type it in and see what you think. Do we want to go there yet?
I'd like to see it in writing.
So let's, Linda, try this. And it doesn't mean, look, I'm not wedded to what Black's Law Dictionary says discretion is.
I'd like to just add, according to their oath of honor.
Yeah, that would be also fine.
Yeah.
So it means, start with this. A power or right conferred upon officers by law, excuse me, of acting officially in certain circumstances, comma, according to the dictates of their own judgment and conscience and their oath of honor. Excuse me. Sorry about that. questions, comments? It may not, we may need to untangle the legalese from that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we would want to say, you know, power conferred upon officers by law of acting, comma, or not acting, comma,
So, Linda,
officially in certain.
yeah,
That's kind of
and say of
cumbersome.
acting, after the word acting, put a comma, and then put or not acting, comma, that actually begins to make more sense to me. Yeah. I might need to sleep on it a little, but I'm. So if that's what we think we're talking about, can we go, let's just hold this one in abeyance. We can come back to it, not written in stone. Let's go back up to that section on discretion then.
I had a question about the wording at the very end of that section where it says inappropriate circumstances can be a more effective means to achieving a desired end. Should we be more specific about what a desired end might be? Like, would be more effective means of achieving safety for the community, more effective in achieving de-escalation of the situation, or I don't know, some other wording in there? Or do we want to keep it broad with just the desired end, because recognizing that can be variable from situation to situation?
Interesting question. I'm wondering if this is where, I like the idea of referring back to safety. That's one of the issues. The desired end is the, I mean, that's where we refer back to the goals and the mission of the department.
Right, because the desired end might be to write as many tickets as possible.
Well, that's,
So,
that's.
Well, I wondered about that too, and I wondered if it's achieving personal and public safety. Is there any circumstance, and I guess this would be for you, Corporal, is there any circumstance where the goal would not be personal or public safety?
I mean, discretion's used in a number of areas. There's traffic stops. There's when we go to calls, if someone's just acting out, we can use discretion on whether we have enough to arrest them for disorderly conduct if we feel that that's necessary. So, like what was just said earlier, I mean, it's a really a case-by-case basis on what we're looking for as an outcome, as a desired outcome for any situation. Like I said, whether it be anywhere from a traffic stop for a headlight out all the way up to a domestic assault or something like that. Well, domestic assault, we don't have discretion, but something like that. So it would be hard to say.
Well, what about resolution? Achieving a desired resolution or achieving a resolution? Like, I don't know. It does sound weird.
It's hard to narrow it down because like I said, every single incident or situation is completely different, and you might be looking for something different out of it, and we have to take into account whether there's a victim or no victim, because if there's a victim, and the victim wants something done about it, then we don't have discretion. Like if a homeless guy steals a pack of hot dogs from Walmart, if Walmart wants them charged with it, we have to charge them. Where I personally might not feel like that would be the best situation or best resolution for the situation, but I'm bound by serving the community, and at that time with Walmart being a victim, I would have to serve them with what they want. So
Yeah,
it's touchy. It's a difficult thing to put into
Yeah.
text.
rather than, I mean, my concern about this particular language is it makes it seem like it's each case specific. And I'm not really sure that and that's the dilemma of putting it that way. But if we think about it as the desired end is really expressed in the mission statement of the police department, so you could put it this way, that it's more a means of achieving the ends described in the mission statement. That's what we're trying to achieve over the long haul, rather than in each discrete incident. And I know that sort of takes, that's a different tack, and I'm not necessarily wed to it, but it's one that one could do. You could say, well, the long haul, I don't know that I would, Corporal, Dan, I'm with you on, Walmart, and I grant it's just an example, but a big chain charging a guy with petty larceny for taking a pack of hot dogs, strikes, particularly one the size of Walmart.
Les Miserables.
Yeah, to me, I almost, and I would argue for the guy when he comes in court. Really, we're gonna do this for Walmart? Come on. I would say the end that we're trying to achieve is public safety, and a sense of security and belonging. So I'll grant you that.
Could I try some language?
Yeah, try some language because I'm fudging here.
Okay. How about inappropriate circumstances can be a more effective means of achieving a just, equitable, and beneficial to the community result. Period.
Okay, let me go back and cross out achieving and cross out desired end. And then type in just, equitable, and you, Peter, you use beneficial to and
beneficial to the community.
right. But I was going to say something that's beneficial to the community, an end that is beneficial, a result, and a result.
Or in an outcome that is beneficial to the community?
Why not?
Well, then we don't have what are just and equitable referring to. Because
okay, and what desired, let's see, can be more effective means of achieving a just, equitable, and
How about, what if we rearrange a little bit and say achieving an outcome that is just, equitable, and beneficial for the community?
great, I really like that.
achieving, yes, yep, and outcome, right. That is just, equitable, and beneficial to the community.
Yeah.
I like that.
I also, Bruce, have a question just before that where it says which may be correct. I'm not sure what is meant by that. If it means that an arrest would be, could be done because, in accordance to the law, I think we need to make that a little clearer.
Actually, I was wondering if we could just delete it.
Yeah, that would be fine by me.
I didn't like it either.
I had that one as a cross out. So,
Good.
because I don't think it's necessary. So if we were reading this then, it is important to remember that a timely word of advice, rather than arrest, in appropriate circumstances can be more effective means of achieving an outcome that is just, equitable, and beneficial to the community. A much better sentence.
Can
And
we
it doesn't
back
lose
up
any.
to the, can we go back up to the first paragraph?
Of course we
Um,
can.
It reads, it starts out a little weird, and I don't know if responsibility is the word as opposed to responsibly.
It is. That was going to change grammatically. So, yep.
Okay.
Use, actually, instead of, just delete that there. I was going to delete, yep. And a member will use the discretion vested in the position responsibly and exercise it within the law. We'll get to the principle of reasonableness. And can you get rid of the word "the" before members on line 19? And actually, yeah, it's the principle of reasonableness will guide, and just get rid of the word "the" and put an apostrophe after S. I might change the word members, but and what about on line 21, change shall to should?
Just being a grammar wonk here, in the sentence above the principle of reasonableness,
Mm-hmm.
members should either both be plural or both be singular.
Yep. That's it. So you're looking at the first sentence? Oh, I see. You're right. In that second sentence of the paragraph. So, put the parenthesis, put the apostrophe between the R and the S in member, individual. Yep. And get rid of the S in determinations. It's easier. Members are department members, I guess.
So how does that read? The principle of reasonableness will guide members, member apostrophe S
Oh yeah,
determination.
never mind. It's got to be singular. Let's put the back in.
Yeah.
I was thinking plural. Sorry.
Just as an aside, a few minutes ago I dumped tea all over my papers, all over my computer, all over my power strip down there. So if I suddenly blot out, it's so far so good. It
So long as you don't electrocute yourself, please.
Yeah.
Come on, Lynn.
If we see a big flash, we need to send the rescue squad.
Right. It didn't blink out immediately, so I think we're gonna be okay. But I am a little worried.
Okay. I'll tell Tom never to bring you tea again. So, how are we otherwise? We will need to define reasonableness. Do you want to do that now or later? Peter, how are you with doing that?
Well, I'm looking at the duty to intervene policy, and that it's a little different because it's particularly referring to use of force. But I'll read that. That says the amount of force that would be used by other reasonable, well-trained officers when faced with the circumstances that the officer using the force is present with, I think we could probably say reasonableness, and that's actions and/or behaviors that would be used by other reasonable and well-trained officers when faced with the circumstances
With
that
the same or
the
similar
officer is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With the same or
Yeah.
similar circumstances?
yeah, that sounds good.
So Linda, go down and create a B in definitions. Yep. Great. Put in reasonableness. And Peter, don't go too far. It would be actions that,
I would say behaviors and actions.
okay, yeah, behaviors and actions. That
Would be used, and I want to come back to this, but I'll read this now, by other reasonable and well-trained officers
if confronted, if faced, why don't we just say faced, not confronted, faced with the same or similar circumstances.
So here's my the hesitation about that is, and I don't really have a conclusion with this, but it's whether we'd say reasonable, well-trained officers or a reasonable person. Now, obviously, this is something, use of discretion by an officer. But I put that out there. I'm not.
Yeah, I know, and I would personally agree with you, but the Supreme Court, I think, doesn't.
Okay.
I think the Supreme Court says we have to judge, even under these circumstances where we're talking about just discretion and reasonable discretion.
Yeah, we have to, use the group of people that we're referring to. What's reasonable for them.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I mean,
it would not be my preference, but it's the preference that is set for us. I believe, Peter, I'd be happy to double check that, but I'm almost certain, since I've had to deal with it a couple of times here, and I want it to be at least as consistent as we can be, because we had to use that both in use of force and in duty to intervene, and here we generally utilize that same. We're judging against other similarly situated officers who are reasonable and well trained. And I think that doesn't make it too loose. It wouldn't even mean other Bennington officers.
right, and it's also the well-trained is,
Yeah.
I think, a very important part of that.
Absolutely, I agree. I like that definition, by the way, other than my own misgivings about the reference group. But,
Okay.
okay, let's move to use of force. I'm worrying about time. And we're obviously going to create, after that, Linda, after the title on line 30, just put in refer to, it's, I can never remember which one comes first. Response to resistance / use of force.
And duty to intervene.
Oh, yes,
Policy.
and duty to intervene. Yeah, and we may even refer to the use of CEWs. Those three, right, Dan? Ferrara?
Yep.
So
All those
also
pretty much.
add use of CEWs.
What's CEWs?
Conductive electrical weapons. They're all piece.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Lynn. Sorry.
Yeah, the wording about, see, I'm not sure which line it is. Oh, okay, here it is. On lines 36 and 37.
Yep.
Where it says, only after discussion, negotiation, and persuasion have I found that. Could we just change, or maybe add, I'd like to add the wording of de-escalation techniques.
Yes, I've
Because
actually,
that goes
Yep.
beyond, and then I don't know if we want to take out discussion, negotiation, or persuasion, or say de-escalation techniques such as.
no, we could actually say, or other de-escalation.
Right, great. Yep.
Okay, so after persuasion, just add the words or other de-escalation, and that's going to have a hyphen in it. DE-ESC, yep, techniques.
And then can we ditch the word inappropriate? Found out to be ineffective, have been found to be ineffective. Because hopefully the officers are trained so they're not using inappropriate techniques. And
well, yeah, or
it seems like if there's any, yeah.
Well, I think what it's saying is, as inappropriate is, like if someone is actively beating someone up right in front of us, it's not appropriate for us to say, whoa, stop, please back off, get off of them, please, and go through all those steps.
Right.
So I think that's what it's saying is inappropriate. We're just going to jump in and break it up.
Gotcha.
And I think that language is fine. And remembering we're not trying to redo use of force policy here. We're just trying to refer to it and recognize that it is critically important. Actually, the one place that the one language that I would put in here that comes out of the use of force, and I know I didn't give you all of these because there's no way I could have sent all of that to you, and that is that respect for life is the prime value of the Bennington Police Department. And if we could put that, I may not be quoting it accurately, but if we put that language in, I will fix it so that it's just a quotation from the use of force response to resistance policy.
It would be good to have that listed first under the title.
I agree. Can we right there above that? Right above that? Yeah, right there. And just put it in quotes. Respect for life is the primary value of the Bennington Police Department. Yeah, let's keep it all spelled out. I will get the actual language and put it in quotes, and then, yep, great. I know how to get that. I have it right on the computer. I think you're right that putting that at the front end is good. Perfect. Anything else there? Remembering we're not rewriting it. Okay, confidentiality.
Yeah, I had something on confidentiality.
Can I just go back one second? Sorry, Lynn.
Absolutely, Beth.
Is that in that last sentence on line 40, is that supposed to be inhumane as opposed to inhuman?
Yes. Thank you for the E. You're right. Yeah. we're supposed to be inhumane. Why I didn't see that, I don't know. I need to get a red pen. Okay, confidentiality.
If we can change whatever to whenever.
Yes. Thank you for that. Was on my first. That was my first place. So great. Yep. Change that to whenever. Oh, and whatever. Actually, it's a whenever and a whatever. So it's whatever. Actually, go back, Linda. I put it somewhere else. Say whatever. It should be whatever at the beginning. So go back and delete whatever you just. Yeah, that it. Can you go back? I don't know. We'll see. Keep going.
No, isn't it supposed to be? It's whenever a member sees or hears or
No.
what. Okay, go ahead.
It should be whatever they see, hear, or learn that is of a confidential
Yeah.
nature, and
Gotcha.
whenever they see it.
Okay.
After the comma, after nature. So even if you're off duty and you hear something, it's still confidential. And whenever. And whenever an officer. Okay, actually, just say and whenever, and I know what that's going to mean. We'll have to figure out how to write it.
And what do we mean by or legal provision? Do we, is it performance of duty or legal requirements? Require otherwise, or
Yeah, I would say.
I'm not sure what legal provision.
I think, and Dan Ferrara, help me out if this is a sort of an awkward way of saying it otherwise, but at some point you might testify in court, in open court, as to something that you've heard in confidence. And so it's some provision of law that requires you to reveal a confidence.
Yep.
Is
There's that,
that
and
what
then
we're
there's also
talking about?
there's that, and there's also just the the duty to report.
Right. So if you have, right, a duty to report is a perfect example, a better example than mine. So, but it's not a legal provision, it's a provision of law. It's a statutory requirement, correct?
Mhm.
That's
Right.
what we're really talking about. Whether, unless the performance of duty,
Or statute.
or yes, or, well, it could be a statute or it could be some other legal provision. So I'm going to say, I don't want legal provision, some other provision of law. And I think that's really a term of art. So delete that. And then, yep, provision of law requires otherwise. Because it could be statutory, it could be judgment, it could be and I want that whenever in there, but I know that that's not grammatical at the moment. I can make it grammatical when it comes back to me and then send it back out. So that it's whatever you hear and whenever you hear it. Doesn't matter when you've heard it. It just needs to go somewhere in that sentence. But it was, I didn't work out language. Let's not spend any time on it. I can work out the language. Lynn Mazza, what else?
Okay.
Yeah, I had a question about at the very end of that section where it must not be improperly divulged. The
Right.
IACP one gets into specifics about how they can't use sensitive information to advance their financial or private interests. They will not release photographs. There's a whole social media question around that. Do we need to break out what improperly divulging is, or is that simple? Is that kind of self-explanatory or self-evident?
I don't think it's self-evident or self-explanatory. Can you point us to where you were reading? I know it's there, but you just added. Unless it's all wet.
It is all wet and crinkly and weird. But on, let's see. I'm sorry, I was just looking right at it. Oh, here it is. Let's see. It's in section 9. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet. The 6th bullet. The 4th and 6th bullet on that one, it says officers are prohibited from using law enforcement sensitive information gained through their position to advance that one.
Yeah, that one, yes.
And then the next, there's 2 down from that. It says officers shall not take or release photographs capturing sensitive information or images.
Unless authorized.
Unless authorized, yep. And then jumping over to C, public statements, appearances, and endorsements.
Well,
under
hold for right where you are right now. But does everybody sort of see where I think shall not be divulged? Linda, just so we can hold it for right now, can you put down IACP 9?
I'm sorry, it's 5. Bullets 5 and 7.
Oh, right. No. Yes, bullets 5 and 7. No, it's number 9, bullets 5 and 7.
Yes. And then under that one, 10, I don't see A and B. Oh, I guess that's.
That's because A and B are under the procedure. That's
Okay,
way
gotcha.
beginning.
So then under C1, bullet 2, it says divulge or willfully permit to have divulged any information gained
Right.
for any other purpose, la 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 la, and that's in public endorsements.
Right. Yeah. So that's actually C2 bullet 2.
Yep.
C2 bullet 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's. I might say. So I might put in for example, and then use that language.
This includes, but is not limited to.
Right.
Nice.
So Linda, just for my sake, because I'm going to have to do this, put in, right there after divulged, put in, this includes, but is not limited to, and then put in a colon, and then the rest of it I've got. And it should be, this is going to be capitalized because it's the start of a new sentence.
And my other comment on that section is, do we want to refer to the social media policy? You know how in the other ones where, because this one I think links largely to social media.
Yep, I agree. So let's do that. Let's, at the top of this one, refer to social media policy under confidentiality. Yeah, because it really is.
And then in that same paragraph that we were just working on, should it be members of the public have a right?
Or rights,
How about
plural.
rights?
Or rights? Okay.
Yeah, have rights.
Security and privacy. Yep. I actually stand in front of a mirror and read the whole thing out loud when I'm working on it, so that let's move to integrity. How about, well, no. Linda, at the very least, line 20, it should say their official status, not the official status. IR. Great. I'm okay with this, other than that. There might be a little tweaking that happens, but you'll see it when it happens. Like, for example, is there a difference between, for you folks, between, that could be the gifts, presents, subscriptions, blah, 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 that could be interpreted as seeking to cause the member to refrain from performing official responsibilities, or just, it could be interpreted as causing the member to refrain?
You could just say seeking to influence, which would kind of cover whether they were trying to get the officer to do something or to not do something.
Right. Seeking to influence the member. Yeah, I like. Peter, what was that again?
Could be interpreted influencing the member from performing official responsibilities honestly and within the law.
Yeah. So, Linda, as the member to, let's see.
You're gonna
Do we get rid of to refrain?
Yes.
Just get rid of that.
Yep. Seeking to influence the member from performing.
Yeah. Here's a question, and I know the department's policy talks about members all the time. I'm not sure that we've never used that kind of language before. And Linda, I don't want you to go back at all and do this, but if we could be talking about officer and then put, like the IACP does, I know that not all employees of the department are officers, but we could put a footnote in that basically says, when we're talking about officers, we're talking about every employee of the department. Does that make sense? Or should we leave it like?
I like the distinction between member and officers. In some places we say members and that's broader, and in other places we say officers because it's specific to a law enforcement officer action.
But maybe it's not, I don't know if it matters or not. I know what you're saying, Bruce. I don't know if it matters if whether we call them members or employees, because members does, denote kind of a more than it's you do it because it's your job kind of thing.
Yeah, I hear you. It's not going to kill me one way or another. So,
but I agree with Peter too, because not everything. Because I think of like the oath of honor, and not everything is going to apply to all employees, right?
Right. Corporal Dan, are we correct when we suggest that not everybody takes the oath, or is it the case that everybody takes an oath?
So there's the civilian staff and the sworn staff.
Right. Does the civilian staff take any oath?
Not to my knowledge.
That's why we're calling you the sworn staff.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Learn something new every time I do this. This is good. Let's keep moving then. And we know we wanted to talk about cooperation with other agencies, and can we just call this one first of all, we're gonna put down the policy is called collaboration. Collaborative partnerships, I think it's what it's called. Refer to collaborative partnerships. And this is one where we're going to have to sort of expand this current. And Lauren, you had language here somewhere that I really liked.
Well, is there any reason that we couldn't change the title from cooperation to collaboration?
I don't see any reason. We can do whatever we want. That's why we're here. So let's cross that one out and call it collaboration.
I like it better too, Beth.
I like it. It's a better concept.
So what is a legally authorized agency?
I think Lauren, and Dan, help me out if I'm wrong, but I think what I think of what they're trying to refer to is other law enforcement agencies.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Or
State's attorneys.
Yes, or law enforcement or other governmental agencies. So like DEA, FBI, Sheriff's Department, State Police. That's what. So we could actually describe that slightly better, and
I'd like to include non-legally authorized agents.
Exactly. I want us to add a second sentence.
Okay.
Like, in addition, the police department. So why don't we try something like it? In addition, the BPD will collaborate with a variety of community agencies and organizations in order to fulfill its purpose and goals. Language like that.
Here's my concern regarding that. You said other organizations. How much can that be interpreted into working with vigilante groups?
Well, I think, as I recall,
that's a problem in other parts of the country.
it is a problem in other parts of the country, but it is, I think, if we put in the examples that we know are in the other, so to include, but not be limited to, UCS, PAVE, VIL, state agencies, you don't need to spell them all out. It's okay. Leave that one. You don't need to go back. Yeah, that's good. I'll fill in the rest. But you're right. State agencies should go in there. So, for example, what's the one on Elm Street.
Child Advocacy Center.
Child
Yeah,
Advocacy Center.
CAC.
Yeah, CAC. Right. There are a number of them, and we don't want to try to create an exhaustive list. But if we create a list that looks like that, and when I mean organizations, occasionally it might mean cooperating with or collaborating with GBICs, for example, for a variety of reasons. So any number of those, but I don't want to lose Lauren's notion that we say, something like when the BPD, can we put that maybe at the end, right at the after the last word after times, and just we'll change this. Lauren, help me out if this doesn't get where you were going. When the BPD enters into a collaborative relationship with an agency, expressed in a memorandum of understanding. By the way, under that policy, that's what they have to do. They have to enter into an MOU. That's what's required of them. Yep. A copy of that MOU will be made available to all members of the department.
Good.
And how they do that is hopefully it'll be an electronic link.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna force this process of doing this. But does that Lauren, does that reach where you wanted to go, or did you want to go further?
I mean, I think that's good. And if they have it as a hyperlink in their policy, then that's public facing, so the public can see what the MOU is too. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. We want the public to be able to see. I want the department to know.
Yep.
And every member of the department, but I also want the public to see what that MOU is.
Good.
And these are published. All these policies will be published on the police department's website.
And to go back, this might be a little nitpicky. When you talked about Bruce purpose and goals, I wondered if we wanted to stick with vision and mission.
Perfect.
Mm.
Better
So
than
it's
that.
consistent.
Yep. Vision and mission instead of that.
Yep.
Perfect. Love it. Okay. I think we can. We're very close.
Yep.
Let's just take a quick look at personal professional capabilities.
I have a grammar thing on that, which is the second paragraph.
Thank you.
Through study and experience of any police department, then
It should be A anyway. That one should be A. Peter, you are breaking up.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying that on that first line of the second paragraph, rather than use the word may, we should make that stronger and say should.
Yes.
Member require.
Yep. Yep. I think that's fine. Can we, in the, yep, let's let's move on to private life, and under this one, go down, yep, add, actually, refer to, social media policy. Good. And there may be other policies that talk about discrediting the agency or themselves. I'll go through and look and make sure those references are there. Peter, as I recall, it was under.
I thought it would be useful to have to have a specific reference to political activity here.
Yes.
I'm looking at IACP history paragraph D, and just the very beginning of that political activity, so that we would have a sentence that says, and let me read this and then I'm going to make a change to it. Officers will follow applicable law regarding their participation and involvement in political activities. My only addition to that sentence would be officers shall follow applicable law and the policies of the Bennington Police Department regarding their.
Okay.
I had a question about applicable law in that case. Are we talking about federal law, Vermont law, town law, and do we assume that the police officers know what those applicable laws are?
Yep. They are obligated to know that. And it does, they don't lose First Amendment rights but they are, like everybody else, they are limited. So whether a police department member or a teacher or somebody else, you can comment on, and it's that applicable law, as I recall, was an appendix to the bigger document from the IACP. That's at least in part what we're talking about. So they can speak on matters of public concern. They can't air their private beefs in public. That's not protected speech. And I think that's what we mean. So, Linda, while we're still here, and down at the, I'm trying to think of, okay, so after in between these two paragraphs, so at line 8, perfect. Add the following sentence, and then Peter, I'm going to ask you. I think we should include the rest of that section D, but at the very least, we're going to put officers shall follow applicable law and the policies of the BPD regarding their participation and involvement in political activities. And then ... put IACP, and that would be D. Okay. And folks, if that's too much for everybody when you get it back, say so. If you think it needs to be more specific, when you get it back, say so. And hopefully you'll get it back early next week. I have 4 o'clock.
Yeah, two quick editing grammar.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The last paragraph, members' character and conduct. authority maintain.
Oh, Peter, turn off your picture and then say it. We lost. There you go. Because we lost you.
If the maintaining, ing to maintain, and then the last sentence, the letter apostrophe s.
Yeah, it should be apostrophe s. Under members' personal behavior, that's an apostrophe s. Peter, email me the other one. Okay? Lynn?
And I have to jump into another meeting, so
Yes,
I'll look forward to the
You need to
draft.
go. You'll
Yeah.
get it back.
Okay,
Hopefully Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest.
great. Thank you
That's
very
whatever
much.
you-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Lynn, you have something you wanted to. Where did you go?
Yeah, here I am. I feel really strongly that there needs to be a conduct unbecoming of an officer section added, and we can lift that pretty much directly from the IACP one, and I can send you which bullets I think are most important to lift from it. I hear that we're trying to end the meeting, but I think this is
Lynn, there's only 3 bullets.
well, no, on that one, but it goes on to
Neglect of duty, which would be conduct unbecoming.
neglect
Number
of duty,
5
and then,
is neglect of duty.
right, and then number 6 is accountability and responsibility, and there's 3 bullets in there that I think should be included. Number 7 is conduct towards fellow officers, which I'll defer to Dan about that one. Dan,
Okay.
Corporal Dan. And then the conduct towards the public, number 8 on the
Right,
top of page 2.
That's right. You did that.
Really, that one's is key. That one,
Yep.
in my experience, is the crux.
Yep. So here's what I would like you to do, if it's possible. If you can email everybody, I think you've got everybody's emails with those.
Yep.
And then I'll try to plug things in. Remember, we're just making a rough draft at the moment. You're going to see something, and then I want you you'll have about 5 days to comment on it, or maybe longer, a week. So, because we're way behind at the select board side. So, is that okay with everybody? Great.
Yes.
Good work, everybody. Get out there and enjoy the sunshine.